Hi, it's Andrew from Acuity Auto Redact. Welcome to the Data Protection Weekly podcast, where we wrap up all the biggest issues affecting data protection professionals in the UK each week. So this week, I thought we'd look at something a bit different. Now, as data protection professionals, we know you can have the most sophisticated firewalls, data protection leak rules, zero trust architecture. Everything can have multi-factor authentication, but none of it matters if Dave in accounts leaves his laptop open on a train, or Sarah in HR clicks a link for a free coffee voucher that turns out to be a ransomware download. So often the biggest vulnerability in terms of protecting data from a technical perspective isn't the technology we use, it's the people, and the battle for data protection is won or lost on day one of their employment. This is where we're going to look at how we can train people to be effective in their data protection practices. Now, the ICO doesn't care how boring your slides were. They care whether staff actually understand risk. But as an employer under GDPR in the UK, you have a legal obligation to ensure that personal data is processed securely, and that makes sure that everybody understands what unauthorized and unlawful processing looks like and the causes of accidental data loss, destruction, or damage. When a breach occurs, the regulator will ask, potentially, to see your training records if they're applicable. And more importantly, it's something that you can use to show that you've put precautions in place to stop the incidents happening and to prevent them from happening in the future. So the culture of security is going to always be something that's evaluated in your organization. And if a simple phishing email manages to trick someone into giving away data, well, that's not really a technical issue. It's a training failure. So we need to shift from compliance training and tick boxes and making sure we've done everything we need to actually thinking, are we having an impact on people's behavior? It's not just about teaching them the different articles of GDPR, but the habits, the habitual things that they can do on a day-to-day basis that prevents a disaster or unfortunate situation from actually happening in the first place. So we are talking about the basic everyday actions that form the foundation of your security and data protection posture. Because right now, the threat landscape is evolving faster than most companies can keep up with their handbook updates. So let's think about this in 3 steps that you can take when you're inducting new staff to make sure that data protection principles are taught effectively and shape behavior. So one of the fundamental pillars of good data protection practices for everyone is the lock it or lose it rule. Now, what do I mean about this? Well, it's a fundamental physical security rule. You need to train your staff that their screen is a window into the company's most sensitive data. Rather than saying, lock your screen if you walk away, make them think, well, actually, your computer is a bit like an open locker. It contains lots of information that's very valuable, that's very useful, and that you want to make sure is protected. And in the same way that no one would just leave a locker of valuable information open for people to get in, you wouldn't do that to a computer. So telling people to press the Windows key and L or the super key and L, or if you're on a Mac, the Command, Control, and Q buttons needs to be taught in a way that's understandable, like you're protecting a locker, and that it becomes muscle memory. Actually practice locking a computer during induction. I'm often frustrated when I talk to people about security practices that they'll just put a symbol on the screen that says Windows key and L, but actually get someone to do it. See what the lock screen looks like. People might not have ever come across it before. Explain shoulder surfing can be a risk. If you're in an organization where customers are potentially present, are they looking over at a password that you're typing in? Never type a password if someone's looking. Remember, the password is the key. If someone's looking at it, they're potentially copying it. So it's things to remember. I always think that's a basic one, because whatever organization you're in, if you can get people to lock the computer, it reduces the attack surface substantially. It's definitely a good habit to embed, and getting people to practice it and getting them to equate it with something physical, a great way to understand good data protection practices. Number 2, is to teach phishing defense against those nasty phishing emails with what I like to call the pause principle. Now, phishing remains the top vector for cyber attacks. New hires are prime targets because they don't know who everybody is yet. So when they get an email that looks like it could be internal, they're probably going to click it. They're not going to want to let someone down. So don't just do the typical thing of showing some bad emails. Teach the pause principle. It changes behavior. So before clicking a link or downloading an attachment, get people to actually pause. Did I expect this email? Does the sender's email address match the name? Is the email domain in our organization or external? Is there a sense of artificial urgency? Something needs to happen quickly or something bad will happen. You need to make sure that you're training people actually on the specifics and make it an acceptable part of company culture to ask for advice if you're not sure. I would much rather have people bring emails to me that they're not sure are spam or not, I'm not sure if they're phishing or not, than just click them because they're worried they'll get into trouble. It's worth it. You obviously don't want someone to bring every email to you, but if people feel a little bit uncertain, you want them to have that confidence to pause, to turn to someone and ask for that extra bit of advice. And the third principle that you really need to teach is the need to know or secure sharing protocols. Now, new employees often assume they arrive at their desk that they can access everything or share anything internally. You need to really share that you only need to share documents with people who need them. The practice of CCing in everyone into an email is something that people sometimes lapse into, maybe to make themselves feel important or the issue that they're communicating is important. But the culture needs to be send the message and the data to the fewest people possible, because ultimately that data could be used for a nefarious purpose. And we shouldn't be oversharing information that people don't need, because we need to respect their time. And if it's information about customers or clients or people we're working with, we don't need to overshare. So think, are they oversharing? Are documents being shared that don't need to be? Have you made sure that the documents that you've sent have the correct sharing permissions on the cloud service platform you're using, whether it's Microsoft OneDrive, SharePoint, or Google Drive, whatever you're using, making sure it's there. And do tell people about the dangers that this can lead to with shadow IT. Often companies like to use things like WhatsApp for quick updates or Dropbox to transfer files, but remind people if these aren't audited IT systems, they're potentially sharing information about people that is not within the terms and conditions of the platform, and you're using a service that could be doing other things with the data that you don't necessarily have as part of your data protection policies. So make sure that you're using company approved tools at all times, not third-party ones. So overall, the three basic principles are the lock it or lose it rule. Equate it with your computer with having a physical locker that you lock up and get people to actually practice it. Teaching people to pause when they feel uncertain in a situation, not just clicking, but that confidence to just stop and slow down for 3 or 4 seconds, the confidence that's not going to waste the day. And thirdly, only sharing documents and data with people who need to know it. These are 3 practical principles that you can really enforce to get good data protection practice in your organization. And remember, good data protection isn't just about having a nice policy. It's about fostering a culture of good data protection principles. And induction is the place where you set the standard. Don't make it a boring presentation. Make it practical, relevant, and keep it to those principles so it sticks. Right, well, that's it for Data Protection Weekly this week. Just a reminder, if you have documents as part of a data subject access request and you want to redact them quickly, do check out acuityautoredact.com or just Google Acuity Auto Redact. You can sign up and get 200 pages redacted completely free to give you an experience of what it's like to redact documents with utter ease. That's Acuity Auto Redact. Thank you. It's been great spending a bit of time together this week, and I look forward to talking about another data protection issue with you next week.
Data Protection Weekly. Data Protection